In an age not so long forgotten, games were forged not by market trends or profit margins, but by steady hands and bold hearts. They sprang forth from tiny teams with wild ideas, carrying with them a spark that defies the slow erosion of time. These games weren't just products, they were passions. The dreams of nerds pressed into CDs or cartridges or floppy disks, meant to be cherished, challenged, and returned to again and again. No subscriptions or microtransactions needed. These are the Dusty Games. And we're the Dusty Games Society, a fellowship of devout retro gamers who gather each month to dust off the dustiest of games and pay homage to these timeless works. And today, my friends, we celebrate a full year of that most noble pursuit. A whole freaking year, 12 Dusty Games spanning 12 months of retro gaming tomfoolery. We're gonna check them all out today, compilation style. One of the Dusty Games Society members even collected every single physical game and sealed them in a literal treasure chest. Jaunty, this freaking legend. I'm so jealous. That's like the physical version of this compilation video. Today you'll see all the reviews for every game we played last year. However, this is just the review parts. Each full episode includes more stuff. Each game video has intros and skits and also all the mini reviews from the Dusty Game Society members, and you can see the full videos for any of these games in the playlist link below. I'll tell you more about the DGS and how you can join at the end of this video, but my friend, the hour grows late. And this is a doozy of a video, so get ready to stay up past your bedtime, clutch your controller tight, and join us as we journey through a full year of trials and triumphs and save states. Oh man, where to start with this game? This is my first time playing it. I had heard a lot of good things. Lots of people say it's one of the greatest games ever made, and in the past I'd play it for maybe an hour and then get distracted by a different game or a squirrel outside my window and then I'd forget about it. But I knew deep down that I needed to play this. That's why I chose this as the Dusty Game Society Game of the Month. Obviously, lots of the Dusty Game Society members had played this before, but it was new for lots of them too. Some of them reliving a story from their childhood, and others, like me, experiencing this special game for the first time. It's so freaking good, you guys. You have no idea. Actually, you probably do, but if you don't, then shut up and listen. I'm going to approach this review as a Chrono Trigger noob, someone who's played through the game once, but I certainly haven't seen all that the game has to offer. Not by a long shot. And also, I'm going to make this review basically spoiler-free, because the story is amazing and it deserves to be able to surprise you. So you play as Chrono, about a guy, an anime guy. He looks like this. This is your character. No customization or anything, although you can name him whatever you want. It's the story of Chrono, but he's very one-dimensional and he has no real personality of his own. He's more or less a silent protagonist. This story is more about the people that he meets. It's about their stories, the stories of all the colorful companions that you team up with, and about the world itself, all the stuff that's going on. The story starts in the Kingdom of Guardia in the year 1000 AD. Chrono is just doing his thing, living with his mom like a proper dweeb, visiting the fair, making new friends, when some stuff happens and a portal rips open the fabric of time and yep, you guessed it, now you gotta save the world. You gotta go back in time to save your friend, and then some stuff happens, and then you gotta go forward, and then it turns out that the stuff in the past affected the present, so you gotta go back and fix it, and then you go to the distant future and find out some more stuff affects that, so you gotta go back and forth between the present and the past and the future, and even back to like caveman times, because there's some stuff back then too. The actual tone of the story is super lighthearted. We're talking 9 out of 10 on the adorable scale. The characters are so happy-go-lucky. They just want to do good in the world. They want to fix what's gone wrong. The themes of the characters' interactions are helping each other out, lifting each other up. It's frankly refreshing to play a game like this where it's not all doom and gloom full of a bunch of angsty, troubled protagonists. Looking at you, Final Fantasy. I wanted to spend time with each one of these adorable sprites just because they made me genuinely like them and want to help them with what they had going on. And that's a big part of the game. Building a team of heroes to deal with the catastrophic stuff, but each hero has their own sort of quest line associated with them. I've heard it described as being similar to Mass Effect 2, where you're building your dream team to take on the Reapers, and that's not far off. And similar to Mass Effect 2, you have a big team of people, but you can't take them all with you at once. You can only have a party of 3. It's always Chrono and 2 friends. And each character has their own unique skills and attacks and items that work well for them, their own strengths and weaknesses. And a hugely important aspect to your team composition is the skill synergies, because each different combo of characters can do different stuff together. The skills are called tech, which of course put a smile on my dweeby face. So maybe one character has a spin attack tech and another has a heal tech, and together they can learn to do a spin heal that heals everyone at once. And there's even triple tech combos where all 3 characters contribute to a huge effect. And right through the game, even right up to the end, as you level up, you'll be learning new techs that give you new options in combat. It's simple, but it grows in depth without ever getting complicated. The battles play out on the actual world map, which is not a common thing with RPGs of this era. You'll be walking along and you can try to avoid enemies by sneaking around them, but either because you've encountered them or because you get ambushed when a fight breaks out, all the enemies and characters all spread out and battle it out right there in the world map. The combat is turn-based, but it's also time-based, so you have to be quick in choosing your attacks or waiting for different party members to be ready so you can pull off your combo tech stuff before the enemies get their chance to do bad stuff. And the boss battles. Oh my gosh, there are some seriously cool and unique boss battles in this game. I won't spoil them because they're fun to discover yourself, but you'll see what I mean when you play them. Each boss has different strengths and weaknesses and special strategies that you need to figure out. Some have multiple body parts that you need to hit, for instance. Some have different phases. Some you'll need to use techs or magic or a certain elemental power. I didn't find the game particularly hard. I rarely had a fight that made me worried that I wouldn't make it through, and apart from 1 or 2 battles that I didn't know I needed a specific elemental damage type or whatever, I didn't have any TPKs. The game is perfectly paced. I was never bored or felt that I needed to grind when I just wanted to get on with the story. There are always new locations and story events to pull you along, and the engagement is genuine. This was probably the thing that I appreciated the most. I wanted to pick this game up and play it throughout the day because I really wanted to figure out this mystery or get my friends through a struggle they were facing or to explore the nooks and crannies of this new area. Speaking of which, there is a ton of extra stuff to do in this game. If you're the type of gamer where you want to focus and just plow through the main story, you could totally do that. But if you're the kind of gamer that wants to go off the beaten path and look for secrets or side quests, then you'll find a lot of extra stuff around the world that you wouldn't have seen if you didn't poke around. The game has multiple endings too, so I hear. Lots of the talk in the dusty halls of the Dusty Game Society this month was about which ending people got. I think I got a pretty basic, normal ending as far as I could tell, but I really want to replay the game, not only to try to find the different ending, but also because there's a New Game Plus mode where you can restart the game with your powered up characters. And also the combo of which characters you had with you at certain parts can change a few of the story dialogue things, and also the battles can feel drastically different as well, depending on who you have with you during those parts of the story. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the art. This game is freaking amazing looking. Lots of games from this era haven't aged well. Lots of them look pretty good, but this is one of, if not the best looking games from the Super Nintendo that I've ever seen. There is a ton of attention to detail in the world. Everything from the map to the buildings to the dungeons to the character animations and the soundtrack. I actually listened to this with headphones on and never once did I get bored of hearing the same tune over and over. I love it. I love this game so much. Now that I've played it through, I can really see why it's one of the all-time classic games. It's one of those games that has all these elements that work really good on their own. And there's so many good aspects that when it comes together, it feels great as a whole. It's not perfect, and as much as I enjoyed it, I wouldn't say that I love it more than lots of the amazing modern games that I've played in the last few years, but it has aged very well. and I can see why it was not only so groundbreaking at the time, but also why it has stood the test of time. It's a timeless story of time travel that deserves your time and attention. So dust off your retro handheld of choice and prepare to go back to the future, make some friends, make some enemies, high-five a frog, and bust a move with some cavemen. In 1997, a game was released that shook up a well-established franchise. Mega Man Legends was not a super hard action game like the 2D games that preceded it, but a fairly easy breezy adventure game. There was a big emphasis on story, character interaction, puzzle solving, but why are we talking about Mega Man Legends when we should be talking about the misadventures of Tron Bonne? Well, because the main villain in Mega Man Legends was Tron Bonne, this girl. And she's a colorful character. Lots of personality, fun dialogue. She's pretty cute. She's kind of one of those villains that you love, even though they're obviously the bad guy. And after the release of Mega Man Legends, Capcom released a game starring the villain from that first game. A sort of stopgap story type game between Mega Man Legends 1 and Mega Man Legends 2. It's a game that I loved on the PS1, and I also played it with my girlfriend at the time. She called Tron Bonne Miss Mood Swing, for obvious reasons. And I always regretted never finishing Tron Bonne because I really enjoyed what I played of it. The story goes like this. The Bonne family is a family of air pirates. Their base is a flying airship called the Gesellschaft. In the Misadventures of Tron Bonne, it's revealed that the oldest sibling, Teasel, took out a loan of 1 million zenny from a bad business guy named Lex Loth to fund the building of the Gesellschaft. So at the start of the game, Teasel is out piloting his robot called the Gustav to go explore some ruins, and he's waylaid by Loth's henchman Glide, who beats him up and captures him. So Tron Bonne, like the good sister that she is, vows to save up enough money to get Teasel back. And that's the game. Your job is to do quests and missions to save up enough money to free your brother. And I'm sure nothing will go wrong with that plan. As soon as you're given the reins to the game, you're immediately thrust into a management sim on the Gesellschaft because it's your job to keep the place running and manage the serve bots. Serve bots are the cutest freaking little robots that you've ever seen. These guys are basically the minions of this game. They're just kind of little Lego looking robots built by Tron Bonne to do her bidding, and each has its own distinct personality and talent. Most of the time it's pretty surface level, but there's a freaking ton of them, so it's neat to see that each one has a little something about them to offer the game or the story. Tron Bonne gets to boss them around and make them do stuff around the ship and bring them with her on missions to do stuff in the world, but more or less they're just kind of there to add flavor to the game. You can basically ignore them for the most part, except for talking with them in the rooms of the ship when you want to do stuff like train or buy upgrades for your robot. But if you want to play house between missions, there's a fairly deep management sim here, because you can chit-chat with each and every bot, and some of them have stuff that they need to unlock a skill, or some task that you need them to do. They have stats, you can do training activities to level them up. Some are good at fighting, some are good at puzzle solving. They have a laziness meter that you need to keep an eye on or they'll stop working. In the actual gameplay, you can get a few fairly minor bonuses from keeping up with your bots, but I'm going to say that this metagame part of the game is entirely optional. One of the DGS members went all out and leveled up each serve bot. He loved that aspect of the game, but others completely ignored it. It is definitely fun and charming in my opinion, so if you play Tron Bonne, definitely don't ignore the serve bots because there's some genuinely good stuff here. And you can torture them. If torturing innocent childlike robots is your thing, it's fine though because they don't have souls. I hope. The style of the art and the characters is one of the things that gives the game its fun-loving mood. It really has Saturday morning cartoon vibes to it. It's totally family-friendly, but there is some genuinely good jokes and interactions here that are a lot of fun, at least for man-babies like me. The characters have great designs to them. The whole thing feels like it belongs in the Mega Man universe, but it also still feels like its own thing because it's all focused around Tron Bonne and the serve bots and the robots that you control. As for the actual game, well, there is no one actual game here. There are missions that you go out on, but each one is almost a completely different genre of a game. For example, the first batch of activities that you get is divided into 4 distinct areas, and each activity has a series of missions. One area is a quarry, which is an RPG area. There's a story of these diggers digging for treasure, and in this one you pilot a flying drone and you're mostly there just to tell your serve bots where to go because they do all the talking and stuff. Another area is an action fighting area. The story here is that you're trying to rob a bank, but the serve bots keep messing up and dropping you off at the wrong place. You can loot buildings by commanding your serve bots to go into them, and then this police officer lady shows up and you have some banter with her, and it's sort of like a boss battle. She becomes a recurring character, and it's fun to see how that little side story evolves. And then another area is just an open area that you can go to at any time. It's the ancient ruins, and it's rumored that there's a valuable treasure there. And you can go back to this place and explore more of it and chip away at it throughout the game. And then another type of area is classified as a puzzle area. And this is actually my favorite type of mission in the game. Seriously, I could play an entire game just with this one gameplay style. The idea here is that you show up at these docks and you want to steal some crates of supplies, but your robot lifter thing doesn't have enough power to do whatever it wants. You only have a certain number of lifts, and when you lift a supply crate, you can only move it a certain number of spaces to get it to the ship. And there are heavy crates that you can lift and move aside, but you can't move them around the map. And there are wooden blocks that you can move an unlimited distance with, and these are usually used to make bridges between areas. And there's a special optional crate with extra valuable stuff in it, so if you want the best rewards, you'll need to try to get all of them. And as the game progresses, they add new elements like cranes and conveyor belts. It's a really, really fun puzzle game that they have here. I spent a ton of time playing these levels and making sure that I got the best possible score. But that's just me. You might not like the puzzle aspect, so you can kind of ignore it. And then at one point in the game, something happens and a whole new batch of different mission areas opens up. And you can kind of choose which ones that you want to spend your time doing. And that's the thing about this game, is there's no one way to play it. You just have the goal of saving up enough money to pay off the debt, and you can go about that in any way that you want. You can kind of take it slow and buy all the upgrades and explore every nook and cranny, or you can just focus on what makes you the most money and save up and fly through the game pretty quickly. It took me almost 12 hours to get through the entire game, although some dusty dweebs finished quicker than I did. And I felt like I went through fairly quickly. I didn't even do all the missions, and I didn't do that much with the serve bots themselves. It's an interesting formula for a game, to give us so many different types of games within the game. And I found it a nice refreshing take on a few different genres all combined together. I definitely recommend playing the Misadventures of Tron Bonne. All things considered, I'm going to give the game a score of 3.5 dusty dweebs out of 5. It's not the greatest game ever. It's kind of repetitive at times, and you really have to be into the vibe of the thing overall to enjoy it, but I found it fun as heck, and it's definitely worth checking out. And it's kind of a no-brainer for Mega Man fans. You get to see the story of one of the main villains of the Mega Man Legends series, and Tron Bonne is a fun character with a good story that's worth experiencing. Just don't spend too much time torturing your serve bots. That's probably not healthy. You know. Yeah, this is another game that I wish I played earlier because it's so dang good. But hey, that's the point of the Dusty Game Society, right? It's a chance to play the best games ever that we haven't played, and a chance to experience these relics of gaming history. So going into this game this month, I had very little experience with it or expectations. This is the sequel to the Earthbound series, and I had never played Earthbound, although I'd heard lots of great things, obviously. And I knew lots of people say Mother 3 is one of the best RPGs ever. I had played an hour of it about 2 years ago, and the little that I saw of the story left a lasting impression on me, and I knew that I had to experience it properly someday. And that day is last month, because this was the DGS Game of the Month last month, obviously. Mother 3 was released in 2006 in Japan for the Game Boy Advance, and fans were hopeful that there would be a North American release of the game. Unfortunately, that never came. The game never officially came out in North America, which is a shame, but lucky for you and me, the community stepped up and made an amazing fan translation. I played the latest version of the translated version, which you can find online or patch your own ROM yourself. And I gotta say, they did a freaking amazing job of this translation. I don't don't think I came across a single point where the text felt like awkward or hinted that it was a fan translation. It was super well done, super professional, but it also sounded like it had a real human element to it. And considering the amount of text in the game, that's an impressive feat. I describe the style of the game as a heavily story-focused linear JRPG. You're taken along this story, which is divided up into chapters, and you explore the world and get into battles with the creatures along the way. There are items to find, puzzles to solve, a little bit of exploring to find your objective, but for the most part, it's a pretty linear trek, which is a-okay with me because the story is great and the game mechanics are solid. The combat seems like a pretty standard affair at first. A JRPG style turn-based battles, choose your attack, use your healing items, beat the bad guys and collect the loot, buy or find gear to get stronger, learn new abilities as you level up, mash that attack button and grind out some XP. Pretty standard JRPG stuff, but there are some unique things that Mother 3 does that help it stand out. For one thing, the battles have a rhythm mechanic to them. So when you're doing standard attacks, if you time your button presses to jam along with the music, you can get multiple chained attacks. I actually suck at this. It's hard to figure out the right timing based on the song. Even though one of the characters has an ability to help, I still found it hard. But it was super satisfying when I was able to pull it off. Eventually you get your dog character called Bonne, and he can sniff out the enemy's weaknesses. The thief character has crowd control and utility abilities, and there's magic in the game, but they call it psionic powers, which is really just magic. So you can use thunder on enemies that are weak to that, for instance, or fire or whatever, and you can heal and other stuff as the game goes on, and you can collect consumable items to heal and remove debuffs and attack items like bombs. The combat system is basic at first. It starts simple and it grows in complexity as the game goes on, which is exactly how I like it done. I don't want 1,000 abilities at level 3 when I'm still learning the game, but I do want lots of options later when I'm bored of button mashing. That's what you get here. And one thing I really appreciated is how forgiving the save system is. If you die, you spawn at the last save frog that you talk to. You don't lose your XP or your items or anything. You just pick up right where you left off and continue the story from the frog place. This is one aspect that I personally really appreciated during the tricky parts. You're taken from chapter to chapter as you learn about the lives of the main character and how they fit into the overarching story, which is really the star of the show. Your perspective as a player will change between characters. The early story focuses on the members of a family, the dad Flint and the mother Hinawa and the twin brothers Lucas and Klaus. You start out as Flint, and there is an early tragic event in the story that gives you an idea of the tone of the game. Despite the first impressions and the lighthearted music and the art style imply that this is a game of heavy emotions. The story's actually lighthearted most of the time. Lots of fun humor and jokes around every turn, but every now and then the story beats hit a serious tone that adds extra gravity as a contrast to the lighthearted stuff. For example, without going into spoilery detail, this one character, Duster, he has an abusive father that really resonated with me. I'm not gonna trauma dump on you here, but I really related to this character and his desire to please his father who could never be pleased, only thought of himself and blamed his own shortcomings on his kid. It's heavy stuff. Their story plays out in a jokey kind of silly way, like, oh, there's Duster's dad being a jerk again, haha. But the empathy that I felt for Duster was genuine. And my heart was in it because of that. Other moments in the game hit on friendship, on heartbreak, on the loss of loved ones, despair and hope. I think it's absolutely brilliant, the story that they told, and the emotions that they were able to explore. There are parts of the story that I will not forget, like ever. It's not gonna be for everyone. There is some weirdness in there and some sci-fi stuff that I wasn't super into, but honestly, it's impressive that a game with pixel art and text dialogue made me feel the feelings that I did. I don't want to talk about the ending because obviously no spoilers, and I don't want to set any expectations, but I'll just say that the ending was like, wow, what was that about? Kind of thing. And I actually had to look up an explanation of what happened because it's one of those stories that leaves lots unanswered and introduces new mysteries right as the curtains close. And that's not a bad thing at all. A game that leaves you thinking and wanting to talk about it after the credits roll is something to be celebrated. The music is super catchy. Like I said, there's a rhythm mechanic to the fight music, so you end up listening closely to that often. And now that I've finished the game, those tracks are like baked into my brain. My favorite part of the music was the unique tracks that are tailor-made for certain story parts. It really adds weight to the emotions when the music helps set the mood for the story. My only gripe with the sound is that it's GBA sound, which means that it's not very high quality. Fine for a handheld, but I played this with headphones on most of the time, and I often wish that I had clean, crisp, clear audio instead of the lower bitrate GBA sound. The art is great too. I wouldn't say that it's earth-shattering or anything, pun intended, if you know you know, but it's got a great style to it, and there's lots of detail in the characters and the extra animations that are needed throughout the story, and the backgrounds aren't super detailed for the most part, but the style is well done, so it still feels like a high-quality visual experience, even though there's not a ton going on lots of times. It almost has like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. I felt like lots of the big open areas were a little samey and boring, but my favorite parts were the wind down scenes where there was lots going on. Lots of people to talk to and stuff to see. This game is a story. That's what it is first mostly. There is combat, exploration, there is a game here, but honestly the game itself isn't nearly as interesting as the story of the game. It's not short. I was almost at 30 hours, which is long for me, but you could probably finish it quicker if you wanted to. And it's not an epically long RPG that'll take you months and months or anything. I personally felt like it was a little dragged out at parts. There were times that I wanted to get to the next story part, but there was like a long slog through a tunnel or across some fields with a bunch of fights that I didn't want to fight to get there. It's not like it overstayed its welcome, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't bored at a few points. And while I appreciate the rhythm combat, I found it difficult and awkward and unsatisfying, so I rarely even bothered. That could have been better, I think. However, I wouldn't trade the experience for anything, because the actual story in this game is special. I felt real feelings and a connection to the world and the stories of these colorful little character sprites that I rarely get to feel, and that alone makes it worth it for me. I highly recommend playing it if what I've said intrigues you, and if it doesn't, then don't. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not your mother. 3. Your mother 3. Okay. When I was a little dweeb, I was nuts about Mega Man. I have a vivid memory of being home from school for some reason. I think I had a dentist appointment or something, and Mom took me over to the video store to rent a game, and the store had a new game in stock. Mega Man 2. I remember playing that game non-stop for like 2 days. I didn't try Mega Man 1 until I was older, but when Mega Man 3 was on the horizon, I was crazy excited. For a good chunk of my life, I was probably more into Mega Man than I was into like Mario or Ninja Turtles. Mega Man was my boy. I used to draw pictures of him and all the robot bad guys that he would fight. As a character, Mega Man himself isn't overly interesting. He doesn't really have much by way of a personality, at least in these old games, but the world itself had a ton of character because each area of the world is dominated by a boss, and each boss is super unique, but that uniqueness also spills over into the world itself. For example, take a look at Snake Man's level. Is there any doubt that there's a Snake Man at the heart of this snake place? No, there's not. As you journey through these difficult places, you get a feel for the villain at the heart of the place, and the tension rises as you work your way through the gauntlet that they set before you, getting psyched up to confront them and blast them in their stupid robot face. Actually, I take that back. These robots aren't stupid, they're freaking awesome. Except for Magnet Man. He's a lame loser. He's a magnet man, so let's take a man and put a magnet on his head. Yeah, I bet you thought real long and hard about that one, eh, Capcom? Not that I could do better. Speaking of which, let's quickly go through all the colorful characters inhabiting this hostile, deadly land, because I think, apart from the tough as nails gameplay, which we'll get to, the characters and their abilities are really what makes Mega Man games Mega Man games. To start off, we have the Wall of Bad Guys. All the old Mega Man games did it this way, except when they didn't, but they usually did. In Mega Man 3, we have Magnet Man, who we already know is the loser of the group. Needle Man is pretty cool. He's got this like Gatling gun on the top of his head that shoots needles. Gemini Man was always my favorite because I like his level, and also I'm a Gemini. Hard Man is just a big thick boy with a big thick fist. Top Man is a top. He spins, you know, like a top. Snake Man is cool. He's a snake, obviously, but snakes are cool, and his level is all snaky. Spark Man is probably my favorite of the actual robot designs. I like that he feels more like an actual robot rather than a dude in a robot suit. And Shadow Man is basically a ninja, and he throws his big ninja star boomerang thing. And then we have Dr. Wily, who's the main bad guy who built all these guys. And in Mega Man 3, there are more bad guy robots, but I don't want to spoil them because there's a fun twist that happens in the game when you learn who else is here. And then we have the good guys. We have Mega Man, obviously, who was built by Dr. Light. And he's just like the good guy scientist who built Mega Man. He's not really in the game much until the end. And we also have the dog, Rush. At first you just have the jumping version, but eventually you get the flying and swimming version. And there's one more character, Break Man. And this guy is mysterious. He arrives with his trademark whistle and he attacks you, but he's not too hard and you're not really sure what the deal is with him. You find out eventually, but I remember young TechDweeb being excited to figure out who this mysterious character is that keeps showing up. The NES was so limited and so many games do not hold up graphically today, but Mega Man games definitely do. They're bright and colorful with lots of small details and fun animations and backgrounds that help immerse you. Mega Man 3 was the culmination of lots of visual evolution when it comes to the enemies and the levels. But what's interesting is that Mega Man himself is largely unchanged. He's a great little character with great animations, and they kinda hit the nail on the head in the first game. They didn't really need to change much. And the sound effects are great too. There are some satisfying feedback sounds when your shots hit that make them feel super satisfying. However, the music is absolutely amazing. The music in all the Mega Man games is great, and Mega Man 3 is the best of the best, in my opinion. These tunes are absolutely iconic and epic NES chiptunes, and I don't think there's a single track in the entire game that doesn't land. If you like retro chiptunes, then you need to listen to the entire Mega Man 3 soundtrack, and I dare you to tell me that it's not the best retro NES music that you've ever heard. Go ahead, I freaking dare you. You can't do it, can you? That's what I thought. The gameplay of Mega Man games isn't gonna be for everyone, but I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Mega Man games are hard. Games from this era were generally hard because of the restrictions of the cartridge. Most games were hard because it gave you more to do. If the game was a cakewalk, you'd feel like you didn't get your money's worth. So for a game like this, you can play it over and over and over and maybe get a little further each time, but it'll take you a while to get good and get to the end. The idea with Mega Man games is that you're going up against a series of bosses, and when you defeat the boss, you gain their power. However, each boss is particularly vulnerable against a specific power, so it's kind of a puzzle to figure out which order to defeat the bosses in. Some people like figuring that out on their own. I know I did back in the day, but if you just want to know the best order, you can look it up. Also, after you clear a stage, you'll get a code, which is how the game handles save games. You can write these down in a notebook, old school style, or use save states. Oh, I should mention that when I presented this game as the DGS Game of the Month, I included the extra challenge that it should be done without save states. But I will admit that I resorted to using a few between level save states late in the game, but barely any, I promise. Once you get through the bosses, you're not done. There's a twist in the plot that means you have a lot more game ahead of you. And then there's the assault on Dr. Wily's stronghold, which is big. There's lots of long levels with lots of bosses to fight in there. And then you get to the end and ideally defeat Wily and save the day. The Mega Man games are simple. They're not easy, they're hard games, and you do have to get good at them to complete them, but they're not complicated. You can run, you can jump, you can shoot, and starting in Mega Man 3, you can now slide, you can use different weapons, you can use your dog's different abilities, but that's pretty much it. It's just you and the game mechanics, and there's not many tips and tricks that you need to know that you can't figure out on your own. And figuring them out on your own is kinda half the fun. I felt like young TechDweeb again, because I'd forgotten all the little tricks that I used to know, and I got to relearn them with all the gamer skills that I've developed over the last 87 years or however long I've been alive. Playing old retro games is great for so many reasons, taking us back to a simpler time, reminding us who we are and where we're from, learning about gaming history, enjoying the games for what they are. But one amazing thing that I don't think I've really talked about much is actually, and it's actually one of the main reasons that I love playing the games that I played as a young dweeb, is that I'm way better at games now. So all these things that confounded and frustrated young TechDweeb are within my adult capacity to handle. It's like going back in time and teaching a lesson to the bullies that pushed me around. It's the dweeby fantasy come true. Mega Man 3 is my all-time favorite of all the Mega Mans that I've played, and I've played most of them. I don't know if it's technically the best, but this is the one that has stuck with me over the years. It's my favorite game in one of my all-time favorite series, and I'm happy to see that it holds up in 2024. Well, hey there, chummer. What brings you around these parts? Looking to dive into some Shadowrun action, are ya? Well, you've come to the right spot, Ome. The name's Mr. Johnson, and I got my fingers in a lot of pies. You help me out, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. Nuyen, gear, your dead brother's eyeball, whatever you need. The shadows are always hungry for another runner, and the streets are always ready for someone with the guts to take them on. So what do you say? You in, chummer? Or are you just another ghost in the Matrix? Do you like my dramatic monologue? Yeah? Okay. Good. Let's back up a bit. Shadowrun is a tabletop RPG, sort of similar to like Dungeons and Dragons, and what makes Shadowrun different than lots of pen and paper RPGs is the setting. Shadowrun is basically like a cyberpunk world mixed with fantasy elements. Imagine a dystopian future where magic has returned and all these fantasy races like elves and dwarves and orcs and trolls are now part of a society. Now blend that with a high-tech world dominated by mega corporations and hackers and cybernetic implants and virtual realities. It's like someone took a potato masher to the Matrix, Lord of the Rings, and Blade Runner and made Shadowrun potatoes or something. I don't know. So Shadowrun started as a tabletop RPG in the late 80s, but it's branched out into other media like video games, obviously. Today we're diving into the Sega Genesis adaptation, a game that tries to capture all that cyber fantasy goodness in a 16-bit package. The world of Shadowrun is set in a near-future version of Earth, where the mega corporations run everything and the average Joe is just trying to scrape by. In this game, Seattle is the primary backdrop. It's a city cloaked in perpetual rain and neon lights and corporate logos. The streets are dangerous, filled with gangs and corrupt cops and all sorts of shadowy bad guy type figures. You'll visit places like the Redmond Barrens, a lawless wasteland overrun by gangs, or the glittering towers of the Renraku Arcology, a massive corporate complex that's like a city within a city. There are also the ruins of the Penumbra district where the undead ghoul creatures lurk in the shadows. Now, I won't spoil too much of the plot because, spoilers and stuff, but the gist is you play as a chum named Joshua, who is trying to find out who killed his brother. You'll explore the streets of various areas of Seattle, take on jobs called Shadowruns to earn money and XP to level up and prepare you for the harder story missions ahead, do espionage, rescue prisoners, hack into corporate systems if you're into that sort of thing, and fight the bad guys, of course. It's a decent enough story that did a good job of keeping me interested from start to finish, with a few good twists and turns that kept me guessing. My main gripe with the story is that so much of it takes place in written expose. There's a few cutscenes, but most of the time the game just tells you what's happening in words. You can really see the game's pen and paper RPG roots, which isn't terrible, but I kind of wish there was more actually showing you what happened rather than just telling you. The game is about Joshua. It's his story. You always start as Joshua, but you can customize him to fit your playstyle. At the start, you have 3 classes to choose from as a starting place. Are you a decker? You're the kind of guy who loves hacking into systems and making corp security look like chumps? Or are you a street samurai, all about the guns and blades and cyberware, ready to take on any goon who crosses your path? Or maybe you prefer the mystical route, playing as a shaman who can summon spirits and cast spells. Each class has its own strengths and weaknesses, and the game lets you build out your character in a way that suits the playstyle that you're going for. I played as a decker, but I ended up kind of specking him out to be more like a samurai, I guess. And as you play, you'll also meet a variety of NPCs, some of whom can join your team and help you on your quest. And you can play as them too. You can switch between your characters, so you kind of get to experience the flavor of lots of different types of builds. These guys have got their own skills, and some of them have backstories, adding depth to the story of the party that you choose and giving you plenty of options for how to tackle each mission. As you can probably tell from what you've been watching on the screen, Shadowrun is an action RPG with a top-down perspective. You'll spend lots of time exploring, going from building to building, talking to NPCs and getting into fights. There are random events that come up, and sometimes you get a choice in how you react. The combat is real-time and fights break out quickly, so you'll need quick reflexes to take down enemies with your weapons and spells. Mostly you just end up mashing the attack button because fights start and end within a matter of seconds most of the time. There's also a almost like side game when it comes to the hacking. You jack into the Matrix to hack into corporate systems and databases and stuff. Really, it plays out like a turn-based RPG. You have a digital avatar and you're flying through the digital world, defeating enemies which are just kind of nodes on the network, and your computer programs are sort of like your spells and attacks. I honestly didn't enjoy this part much. I never really wrapped my head around this aspect of the game despite my character being a decker. I did it every now and then, and I never really felt like it was necessary. I never really got much reward for it, but I didn't do much of it, so maybe I'd have gotten more out of it if I actually tried. One thing that I love about the game is how it rewards exploration and experimentation. There's lots to see if you poke around, lots of side quests and stuff. Plus the game's dialogue system does a pretty good job of letting you interact with NPCs in meaningful ways, gathering information and making decisions that can impact the story. One common criticism that I've seen about the game is that it can be pretty tough, especially if you're not familiar with how everything works. I wasn't enjoying it at all until I took the step of reading the manual, which was a big help. Your general direction through the game can be sussed out if you're paying attention, and you do have a quest log which keeps you on track, but the quest log is pretty bare bones. You just get this section in your notebook that kind of reminds you of your main task, but it doesn't give you much info. Sometimes it's enough, but sometimes it isn't. For example, I had this quest with this spirit lady where I needed to collect 3 things for a ritual. A gargoyle horn, which, okay, easy enough, I've seen gargoyles around. And then the pelt of a hellhound, okay, I found that easy enough. And then the scale of a feathered serpent, basically a dragon. And she's like, I don't know where to find them. And your quest log gives you no hints. So I guess you're expected just to walk around and explore until you stumble upon one. This is fine for the gargoyles and the hellhounds, but this dragon was in a very specific location deep in a cave that you have to reach through a maze of wilderness maps. There is no way that you'd find this guy on your own without a map. Well, I guess there is. I mean, back in the day they didn't have internet maps to look up, but it would have taken a long time. So yeah, once I caved and consulted a guide that had a walkthrough in the maps, the game instantly became a lot more enjoyable. You still end up having to do a ton of side stuff to like level up, and you do these Shadowrun side missions so you get strong enough so you can do the next main story mission. The interface can get a bit clunky and it's easy to get lost in where you're supposed to go next, especially if you like zone out during a key piece of dialogue. But once you get the hang of it and use a few crutches like a guide to keep you on your path, there's a lot of depth to uncover. It can be frustrating at times, but nothing deal-breaking, and the sense of accomplishment that you get from overcoming the game's challenges is definitely worth the effort. And in regard to the art and sound, man, do they nail the cyberpunk vibe. The graphics might be 16-bit, but they do an excellent job of capturing the gritty, neon-soaked world of Shadowrun. The character sprites are detailed and expressive, and the environments are packed with little touches that make the world feel alive. tons of character and style in this game. The sound design is also great. I love the music in this game. It sets the perfect mood, blending electronic beats with eerie melodies that keep up the tension. My only gripe with the sound is that oftentimes during dialogue there's no sound, no background music or anything. It turns off when you're talking to someone. Sometimes you could be talking to someone for like a minute, which is a long time to sit there with headphones on and nothing coming out of them. Shadowrun for the Sega Genesis isn't for everyone. It's a challenging game that requires patience and a willingness to learn its mechanics, and a willingness to play through the pain and seek out outside help where needed, and a love for its unique blend of cyberpunk and fantasy. I didn't like it at first, and if I wasn't playing for the Dusty Game Society, I'd probably have quit early on. But I'm glad I didn't, because when I gave it the attention it requires, I found a rewarding experience that offers a glimpse into a richly imagined world. And there's just something about it that feels fitting for a Dusty Game Society game. The themes of economic disparity and our over-reliance on technology are more relevant today than ever. In a world where corporations wield immense power and technology permeates every aspect of our lives, Shadowrun feels kind of like a cautionary tale, you know? Like, is this our future? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe we should all be getting used to getting cyberdeck augments and talking to Mr. Johnsons for our next Shadowrun. It couldn't hurt to at least hit the ground running, you know? Alright, chummers, that's it for today's run. If you got the guts and the gear, dive into the world of Shadowrun and see if you can survive the shadows. Remember, the streets are always hungry for another runner, and the megacorps won't know what hit him. I first played Tomb Raider back when it was released in 1996. My buddy got this like the day it came out, and I was in love with this game. I didn't have a PS1 until way later. I didn't have a game console or a computer that could play 3D games at all, so this game blew my dweeby little teenage mind. Back in 1996, game design was just starting to figure out how to make traditional game genres work in 3D. Lots of games did it sort of okay, and lots of games didn't. But when Tomb Raider landed, it was such a big deal because not only did it star a new character that was instantly iconic, a female protagonist that was strong and capable, which was super rare back then, but Tomb Raider was really revolutionary because of the tone of the game and the gameplay. If the game was just watching a lady made of triangles flopping around in a 3D world, the game would have been a one and done. It wouldn't have spawned an entire franchise. But the game was a lot more than that. The gameplay itself was new and fresh, the graphics were top of the class, and also Tomb Raider was an early 3D game that felt mature. Not in the sense that it's got like bad words and guts all over the place, but mature in that the tone of the game didn't feel like it was made for kids. You know, the graphics weren't bright and cartoony, they were like dark and muddy, and also the gameplay style required a slow and methodical and careful hand to get anywhere in the game, really. So I wanted to talk about that stuff before I got too far into the review, just to set the scene, because acknowledging what gaming ecosystem this game was released in is important both for understanding what it did right, but also kind of forgiving what it got wrong, at least by modern game design standards. So let's start, as always, with the story. There's not much story. There's a little bit. You're Lara Croft, obviously, a badass millionaire archaeologist lady who lives in a mansion, but the game begins and you're on a mission to find 3 powerful artifacts. You'll explore ancient ruins while dealing with wild animals, supernatural creatures, and encounter villains and uncover a mysterious plot along the way. I won't spoil what little story there is, but it's very bare bones. There's not much there, to be honest. Which is fine, because this isn't a game where the story pulls you through. It's the world itself and the challenging gameplay. In replaying this game, I realized why I never cared much about the story or the structure of the game. Because at any given point, you're like hyper focused on navigating these dangerous levels and learning the game mechanics and physics. That's where the real stuff of the game is. So let's talk about that. If you've played any of the later Tomb Raider games and go back to the first, you might be shocked at how different the gameplay is at the dawn of the series. There is some familiar parts, like back action and exploration, third-person platforming, but Tomb Raider on PS1 is a much cruder version of the later games. It has none of the hand-holding conveniences that make Lara Croft in the later games feel like such a badass. In the original Tomb Raider, you are in control of Lara, and how she moves through the world is entirely up to you. You have complete granular control, and she does nothing outside of the specific movement and moves that you execute. I think this is why it's so jarring to people. One of the main criticisms that I hear when people go back to the original Tomb Raider is the controls, which can feel clunky by modern standards. You've probably heard about the famous quote-unquote tank controls, and that's a thing, but it's kind of unfair because Lara feels like a slow and deliberate tank when you first start playing, but once you get the hang of the distances that you can jump, how far she can fall, how to position yourself so that your jumps land where you want them, it's less of a tank and more of almost like a grid-based thing. Almost like a cinematic platformer crossed with a puzzle game. I'm a big fan of the Tomb Raider series. I've played all the games over the years, and especially the later games since the reboot are among my favorite games. And going back to the original felt very foreign at first. I hated it for the first hour. But then something clicked. Once I stopped comparing the game to the newer games in the series, once I learned the basics of how Lara moves, and once I learned to want to master the controls, I actually started loving the mechanics of the movement and exploration. You have so much precision in this game. In many ways, you have more control over Lara here than any of the newer games. Lara does exactly what you tell her to do. Nothing more, nothing less. And every single time that something doesn't go the way that you want, it's simply because you didn't plan correctly. Lara's various jumps are perfectly consistent, and you need to learn exactly how far she can leap, how far a ledge can be so that she'll grab it, how many steps back you'll need to take a running jump. You'll need to make use of the walk and the sidestep buttons to get Lara into the exact position that you need her to be in, and even some fun ones like the dive jump, which can lead to some pretty hilarious deaths, and the handstand for Lara to show off her flexibility. The game world is one of my gripes with the game. The levels themselves are pretty long, and there's not much variation within them visual, and even gameplay-wise. You'll be moving from area to area doing basically the same thing in different configurations. However, that's one of the reasons that we go back and play retro games. Not just to enjoy the games for what they are, but to see what the games were like at the dawn of the 3D platformer era. However, there's still a good amount of variety to keep things decently fresh. You navigate Lara through levels set in various exotic locations like the mountains of Peru, ancient Greece, and the pyramids of Egypt. The game begins with relatively straightforward levels that introduce you to basic mechanics like jumping and climbing and shooting, and as the game progresses, the challenges become more and more complex, featuring more intricate puzzles, hidden secrets, and traps that require precise timing and keen observation to not get squished by a boulder or whatever. The game is not shy on giving you really difficult challenges to overcome. It's pretty generous with its save system though, so you don't ever have to start the game over or anything, but I would not begrudge you if you make ample use of the save state function if you're playing this via emulation, because some of these areas can require such precision that you'll end up dying over and over until you get it right. It's seriously satisfying when you do that. The combat involves lots of leaping and jumping through the various environments, locking onto the bad guys and blasting away with your guns. You'll face off against wolves and bears, mythical creatures, crocodiles, and human adversaries that are part of the story. You'll mostly be using Lara's dual pistols, but there are a few other weapons that you can find. I guess the strengths of the combat system include the auto-aim feature, which simplifies targeting enemies, which was definitely not common in games from this era, and the strategic element of managing limited ammo and health packs. I guess one weakness would be the repetitive nature of combat encounters, how you're basically doing the same few moves no matter which enemies that you're fighting. It's fine though, it's totally serviceable combat mechanics in a game from this era. Also, you fight a T-Rex and velociraptors, so that's fun. When this game came out, the graphics blew my mind, and now, even through my nostalgia goggles, yeah, not so much. This is pretty darn dated by today's standards. The game has these blocky character models and environments with limited textures and polygon counts, but I do think that the textures and models still look kinda neat as a retrospective to a bygone era. And despite the limitations, the art style does convey a sense of adventure and mystery, with atmospheric settings that range from lush jungles and eerie tombs and catacombs. It's not gonna hold up today, let's be real. but we need to keep in mind the era that it came from and how different it was back then. There's lots here that was never done before, and it's fascinating to look back and see what worked and what didn't. I've loved going back to this game after all these years. I'm not going to say that you'll love it, but if you approach it with the right mindset and a willingness to learn the game's systems and also to experience the game as a piece of gaming history, the dawn of Lara Croft and the jungle and ruin exploring adventure game genre, then you'll probably have a pretty good time with it like I did, even if it's just as a retro gaming tourist. Just, don't look too hard at those polygons. Her eyes are up there. Right there. Up there. Right there. As I was getting ready to make this video, I thought it would be fun to show off an actual Game & Watch game. So I checked eBay and no way I was gonna pay $100 or more just to show you dweebs one of these. But I did the next best thing. I reached out to my Nintendo nerd friend. I had a feeling that he might have one. Now, this buddy of mine is a super nerd. You think I'm a nerd? You ain't seen nothing. What, you don't believe me? Does this prove my point? Yep, that's him. And yes, I know, your first instinct is to steal his lunch money. So I reached out to him and I asked him if he had any Game & Watch games, and he said, yeah. And he offered to send me something. He actually sent me a whole package with 3 games and this beautiful Game & Watch collection book. I read through a ton of this book and I learned some of the history of the Game & Watch games, which is handy because I'm making a video about Game & Watch games right now, actually. This is that video. I think it's pretty common knowledge that Nintendo, as a company, has been around well before they made video games. They used to make playing cards and toys. One of their lead designers was this guy, Gunpei Yokoi. He invented this sweet grabber hand toy, among other things. He also worked on a few of their later electronic toys, including this love tester. I wonder how many people met their sweetheart with that thing. Anyways, legend has it that Yokoi came up with the idea for an electronic LCD game when he was on the train and he saw a bored business guy playing with his calculator, just like mindlessly pressing buttons for something to do. And he figured that he could come up with some sort of electronic game that used the same display technology as a calculator for bored train traveling business guys to play with instead. Yokoi came up with the design of the product, and shortly after that, in 1980, the first Nintendo portable electronic game was released. I have it right here. It's called Ball. Actually, this isn't the original Ball. This is a re-release of the product by Club Nintendo. It's basically the same as the original though. This is a very basic early Game & Watch game. They became more complicated later. Game & Watch games have an LCD screen, and all the parts of the game, like the ball and the character's arms and legs, are represented as single images that can be activated on or off with electricity. In this one, there's just 2 buttons to control the game, and you gotta catch the balls to juggle them. And there's also a watch in the top corner, because these things aren't just games, they're watches too. Everyone needs a watch, right? I'm a Casio man myself. This was back in April 1980. Nintendo released their first wave of Game & Watch games called the Silver Series, because they had silver faceplates, obviously. And it was a huge success, and then less than a year later, they released their Gold Series. And then a few months later, they had their Widescreen Series, which they made a whole bunch of. And then the following year, they released their Multi-Screen Series. What's cool about that series is that lots of the decisions that were made here in the Multi-Screen Series paved the way for the Nintendo DS. Incidentally, this is also the first Nintendo product to have a D-pad. I have a dual screen one to show you. See? Check it out. This is a real Game & Watch game that my buddy sent me. Look at that, 1983. Made in Japan. It's Mario Bros. This was released alongside the original Mario Brothers arcade title, even though it's a totally different game. This one is kinda neat. You need to move Mario and Luigi up and down to make sure that they can load the boxes from one conveyor belt to another. It starts out easy, but it gets seriously hectic. And this is where I can gush about how well the games are designed visually. The on-screen characters and objects are just static pictures, and the illusion of movement is created by switching between them. But the characters have so much character to them. The artwork is super simple, but they have a ton of expression to them that adds to the feeling that they're real figures moving around. I also love here how the game world is colored, and there's almost a multi-layer effect because the foreground is visually in front of the background. Feels kind of like a little diorama. Seeing one of these things in person is a really unique experience. I'm glad I got to show you this and try one out for this video. Thanks, nerd. And there were a ton more Game & Watch games released. Once the Famicom was released, they had lots of handheld tie-ins with console games. They made some tabletop arcade-style Game & Watch games, some multiplayer games that had detachable controllers. You could play these with a buddy. Lots of Mario, but also lots of other classic franchises. These LCD games were super popular for a good long while. They had a good run, but when the Game Boy came along and changed the portable gaming landscape, the LCD games basically disappeared. There were other companies that made LCD games after this. Heck, I had a whole bunch of them and I remember them fondly. But when gamers got real games with pixel graphics, there wasn't much use for LCD games. But the Game & Watch legacy lived on. Nintendo stopped making the Game & Watch games, but they continued to give us these classic games in the form of compilations for their portable systems. The Game & Watch gallery for the Game Boy gave us 4 classic Game & Watch games. And not only do we get recreations of the LCD originals, but we also get more modern updated graphics and animation versions. With Mario characters, some with different settings and gameplay mechanics, this was the first of many compilations that came after it. We got Game & Watch Gallery 2 and 3 on the Game Boy Color. I love these because the updated versions are super well done, and starting here there were additional games that you could unlock. Game & Watch Gallery 3 had 6 unlockable games, and my favorite compilation, Game & Watch Gallery 4 on the Game Boy Advance, that had a whopping 20 games that you could play if you unlocked everything. And there were also 2 collections released for the Nintendo DS, Club Nintendo exclusives. Because of course the DS had dual screens, so why not give us the classic dual screen Game & Watch games at long last? I love these collections. This is my favorite way to play these old Game & Watch games, because just the act of playing the games in this modern way, where it keeps track of your high scores and you can earn stars and you can play both the original and the updated versions, and there's a gallery where you can get little tidbits and unlock extra games. It totally reinvigorates and breathes new life into these classic games from their primitive LCD gaming roots. Playing the Game & Watch gallery games via emulation is definitely the way to go if you're interested in trying these out. But there is another way that you can play Game & Watch games. Emulation. I mean, emulating the actual Game & Watch games. And when you play like this, there's photos of the actual game console, complete, full, proper emulation of the ROMs from the consoles, with faithful graphics that mimic the exact style of the original games. You can play them like full screen where you see the games on the mini consoles, or you can zoom in so that you can see the screens nice and big. But are the games even any fun at all, you ask? Well, here's the thing. I went into this month's Dusty Game Society challenge from the perspective of seeing Game & Watch games as a piece of history. I wasn't expecting to have an amazing time. However, I fired up Game & Watch on the GBA just to try out a few of the games. The plan was to play one of each of the games real quick, just to get a kind of quick overview of what games are in there. I started up Fire in the GBA collection, and I played it straight for 30 minutes. I know it looks simple, but there is something super addictive about the formula of a super simple game that starts out easy but gets harder and harder. And almost every game that I tried did this to me. These games are basic on the surface, and they all start slow and easy, but play them for a few minutes and you'll see where the complexity comes from. When the pace picks up and things start getting stressful, they get fun. This is video gaming in the purest sense. All the skills that you have as a gamer are tested here. Your skills of observation and multitasking and your reaction speed, everything that makes modern games fun is the same reason that most of these are fun. I say most because there are a few in here that are a little too simple to play more than a few minutes. But the vast majority are fun, despite how simple they may seem at first, in my opinion. And it's my video, so I say yes, they're fun. There were a total of 60 Game & Watch games released, and I played them all. And initially I was planning to make this video about my favorite games, but I decided that leaning more towards explaining the history of the series and why these games are important, it was a better approach for this video. So I have all my notes for the games themselves, and that will be the basis for a future video where I show you my favorite Game & Watch games and explain why I love them. So get subscribed so you don't miss that. But here's the good part. You can go play all the Game & Watch games right now. You can play them all via emulation. Load up the compilations, or if you want the most authentic experience, just download the Game & Watch ROM collection and play those. And if you do, I'd love to hear which games you like the best. It's time to play Duke Nukem 3D and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum. Oh my god, this game. It's a vibe, as the kids say. I mean, right from the start, Duke crash lands his spaceship, shouts his famous catchphrase, "Come get some," and then you start blasting aliens on the streets of LA in front of an adult movie theater. Duke 3D is definitely a product of its time, and man, this game is a wild ride from start to finish. I haven't played through the whole game in years, and playing through it this month for the DGS felt like hanging out with young TechDweeb. Sure, I'm a little older, I have a beard now, and I've learned a thing or two about the world since I was 14 in 1996, but I'm just as much of a sucker for blasting aliens and saving babes today as I was back then. This game has aged wonderfully. Nowadays, when you play Duke 3D, you'll probably be playing the more recent Steam version with like modern FPS controls, and it works great like that, but I opted to play the original DOS version with keyboard controls. Just keyboard, no mouse. That's the way we used to play it back then. I mean, yeah, mouse and keyboard is the superior way to play. We know that now. But I played this so much back in the day that I have years of muscle memory playing with keyboard controls. And that's how I opted to play for this month's Dusty Game Society. So, Duke 3D. Yeah, there is a story here, sorta. You could read it in the menu at the start. There were 2 Duke Nukem games released before this, but they were side-scrolling affairs. They were good, I played them, but they weren't really anything special compared to other good side-scrolly, shooty games at the time. This game takes place right after those. Duke is returning to Earth in his ship, and it crash lands in LA. Duke bails, ends up on the roof, and the game begins. You jump down a vent and oh no, there's aliens here on Earth. The streets are deserted, there's a dumpster fire, and more aliens have taken over the adult movie theater. Is nothing sacred? There are aliens all over the place. The cops have been turned into evil pigs. There's a host of other aliens throughout the world, and you go through level by level. And it's kind of like the environment tells the story. Like at one point you're captured and then you end up in jail and you need to escape a jail. And then you need to find a sub which takes you to another city. That's the best part of the story actually. Not like the events of the story, but the way the levels have actual stuff that happens in them. And then in the second episode, you go up into space and there's the same kind of stuff up there. Just really good environmental storytelling. So yeah, you don't play Duke Nukem 3D because of the story, but at the same time you kind of do because the world is the story. And stuff actually happens in this game that changes as a result of your actions. That's one of the reasons that this game was revolutionary. In games that came before it, like Wolfenstein or Doom, the world was just kind of there, and you killed stuff in it as if it was a big arena. Duke 3D feels a lot more modern than lots of the early FPS games because of all the stuff that's in it and all the stuff that you can do in the game. For example, in the second level, you're on the street killing pig cops, and then you could go into the adult video store and they have viewing booths. Ew. So you find your way up to an apartment on the second level, find the key card, and then you reveal a banner. Apparently the aliens took time to make a banner to make Duke afraid, I guess. Is that what's happening here? Anyways, you go down to the street and this building is set for demolition, so you blow that up, and then you can find a sewer grate that you can blow up and go down into the sewers and find a back door into the strip club. In here, there's a bathroom and a pool table that you could actually play. You can freaking play pool on this pool table. See, this is what I'm talking about. This stuff in this game, there's so much stuff. There's a bar where you can find the next card, and then you go into the strip club area, and the place is overrun with pigs, so you have to kill them and be careful not to kill the girls. You can pay them to dance though. Shake it, baby. And then you get to the end of the level where you think that you're going to activate the exit, and it turns out that you're captured by the aliens and they take you off to prison. This is actual stuff that happens in the game, in the level. Sure, there's the usual FPS tropes of random weapons and random places, enemies spawning out of nowhere, and over-reliance on keycards, but there's just so much stuff that happens in the world. So many parts of the level that feel like real places with real things you can interact with, and stuff that happens in the levels to tell the story of the location that you're in. This is, I think, why Duke 3D was so popular back in the day, and why it's held up over the years. It evolved the genre beyond just the graphics and the gameplay, helping it move past its primitive roots and show us that creating a world that feels like our world, a real place where you can interact with stuff and stuff could happen. It made that a possibility for the first time. And the other side of what made this game mind-blowing back in 1996 was the graphics, because this game was miles ahead of what came before it. It did things that no other first-person shooter had ever done. Keep in mind that this came out before any true 3D shooter like Quake. This was back in the time of pseudo 3D worlds with raster art enemies. The items and enemies, all the sprites in the game, they're 2D pixel-based images, almost like cardboard cutouts in the 3D world. They look great though. The enemies have a lot of detail to them, great animations, the effects like explosions look great, everything has a ton of attention to detail. Since this was an era before truly 3D shooters, there were lots of tricks used to do the 3D effect. It's more or less a series of textures that are rotated and tiled in perspective, similar to like Mode 7 on the Super Nintendo, if you're familiar with that. This is the way shooters back then achieved a 3D effect without things actually being modeled in 3D. But Duke 3D had a ton of innovations that allowed the devs to do some really cool things. For instance, the level of fidelity of the points on the map. Doom could do raised platforms and stuff, but in Duke 3D they had enough detail that they could make like cars and bridges, little areas of the map like this checkout with a cash register. This was seriously advanced stuff back then. And also Duke 3D was the first game that I'm aware of that you could look up or down. Before that, your character could just look straight forward and shoot straight forward, but in Duke 3D you can like angle your shots to hit specific things when needed. It was tricks like this that made the pseudo 3D game feel like it was an actually 3D game before that technology was really available. And I don't want to go on and on here. I don't want this video to be super long, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the action. On the surface, there's nothing new here that wasn't done before. You can run, strafe, shoot your weapon, kill the bad guys, standard stuff like your pistol, rocket launchers, chain guns, one of the best shotguns in any game like ever. But once you start finding the rest of the arsenal, the gameplay really opens up. You can get pipe bombs that you can throw and then detonate. You can even throw multiple bombs to set traps. One of my favorites is a shrink ray that you can shoot an enemy with to turn them into a little guy, and then you run over and stomp on them. And a freeze thrower, shooting ice balls that freeze the bad guys, and then you can go over and give them your mighty foot. And there's these laser trip bombs. You can place these on a wall, and anyone that goes through the laser sets off the bomb. And my favorite, the most badass weapon in the game, and a contender for the most badass weapon in any game ever, is the Devastator. It's like a machine gun that shoots tiny rockets. It's so fun. Oh my gosh. So you have a lot of variety in the weapons that lead to a lot of variety in the gameplay. A lot of tricks that you can use if you're clever to overcome some pretty daunting obstacles. But yeah, this game, it really is hard. It starts easy. You'll be lulled into a false sense of security because after the first few levels, the difficulty picks up. And by the end of the first episode, and especially the second episode, you'll need to make use of the generous save game feature. I say, unless you really want to experience a frankly unfair challenge, play the game on easy or piece of cake mode. It's worth playing through the game in a way that won't frustrate you to the point that you want to quit. And even on easy, it's still pretty tough. And then there's the multiplayer. I played so much Duke 3D on multiplayer. This was pre-internet days, so we had to play over our modems. The Dusty Game Society hangs out in my Discord server, TechDweeb's Discord thing, which you should totally join if you haven't yet. Link below. This month we wanted to end with a bang, so someone had the idea to play an old school deathmatch. And we did. It was kinda last minute, so lots of people couldn't make it, but there were 5 of us, and it was a hoot. We played on the 20th anniversary World Tour version, and I must confess I didn't play with just keyboard. I used mouse and keyboard in modern FPS style because I didn't want to get owned. I still got owned, but it was still a freaking hoot. I would like to personally thank everyone who joined. It was a special way to end revisiting Duke 3D for the month. Instant great gaming memory right there. As much as Duke 3D pushed gaming forward because of the innovations that it brought to the table, it was also very much a product of its time. Duke is a badass hero guy with muscles and catchphrases and an attitude like none other. This is a guy who rips the heads off aliens and poops down their necks. This is a guy who throws money at babes while blasting cops with a shotgun. I certainly liked the mature themes in the game when I was 14, pre-internet. This stuff is pretty tame by today's standards. Kids have TikTok today after all, but I felt like a naughty boy being able to look at pretty girls in bras in a game. My mom made me toggle the parental controls when she was around, but when I had the house to myself. But Duke is one of those heroes who's so over the top, so full of himself, that I see the character of Duke as being a lot kind of more self-aware than most critics give him credit for. Like Ash from Army of Darkness. This is a guy who's lost it. And can you blame him? The world is being destroyed. Aliens have taken over. The only humans around are girls who have been enslaved by the aliens, and they're not up for conversation. So Duke is kind of the last man alive. He's at the end of his wits, and considering the world he's in, his attitude and confidence come across more as a cope, a way for him to muster the courage to stay a survivor and face impossible odds, rather than hide in a safe place and wait for the end. So like, can you blame the guy for pooping down an alien's neck? Can you honestly say that you'd do any different in his situation? I know I certainly would. When I was a little dweeb, I used to fantasize that there was like a hidden world all around us. So some secret kind of place just beyond our reach where real magic existed. And in my mind, there were people there, or maybe like creatures or whatever. And they knew that we were over here in our real world from their hidden world. And then maybe somehow a deserving dweeb would be able to find his way into this hidden world and go on adventures. Isn't that lame of me? Don't answer. I know it's lame. Surely you would never wish for such lame things like I did, right? So with that out of the way, let's dive into the world of the Minish Cap, where being small is kind of a big deal. See what I did there? Don't worry, it gets worse. The Minish Cap stands out in the Zelda franchise because it's not one of the big three that everyone rants about. You know, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Breath of the Wild. This game is like the underrated younger brother that's secretly cooler. It doesn't try to outdo its bigger Zelda siblings with massive worlds or console-defining graphics or crazy new mechanics. Instead, it focuses on tight, classic Zelda gameplay, charming visuals, and doing something that actually feels unique in the Zelda world. The ability for Link to shrink down and visit the world of the Minish. What are the Minish, you ask? Well, why don't you shut up and stop interrupting? I'll get to it when I'm ready. If you've played any of the classic Zelda games, you know the basics of the gameplay. You're running around, slashing stuff with your Zelda game sword, solving puzzles, breaking pots like some kind of pottery-hating maniac like me in real life. But what the Minish Cap does that's unique is introduce this mechanic where you shrink down to the size of a small bug. And when I say small, I mean like really small. Smaller than my chances of ever getting a job and moving out of my mom's basement and meeting a girl who will talk to me. Yeah, that small. The shrinking mechanic makes for some seriously fun puzzles. Like, you'll start a dungeon as regular old Link, and then you'll shrink down and suddenly that mundane puddle that you walked by 5 minutes ago becomes a full-on lake. Or that tiny crack in the wall is a pathway to a whole new area. It's a bit like playing two different games at the same time, and it keeps things fresh and interesting, unlike my YouTube videos. Speaking of which, if you haven't subscribed yet, could I interest you in that? Also, let me just take a second to appreciate the items in this game. You got your standard stuff, boomerang and bombs, all that malarkey, but then you get a bunch of unique stuff. For example, the gust jar. This weird little device lets you suck up air and blow it out like some sort of magical leaf blower. You can use it to vacuum up dust or blow enemies off platforms, or use it to launch your lily pad boat in different directions. And there's a few other cool items that do different things showing up for the first time in this game, which is impressive considering how many Zelda games there are. So every Zelda game has a story, right? Even if it's just a flimsy pretext to go out and attack everything that moves with your Zelda game sword. There's always at least a reason that you're out trying to save Zelda or whatever. And here, yeah, you got your classic Zelda scenario. The bad guy shows up, kidnaps a princess, Zelda, obviously, and it's up to Link to save the day. In Minish Cap, we get this new villain named Vaati. Vaati is like Ganon Light. He's not as iconic, but he does have some solid villainous flair. Also, instead of taking over the world with brute force, Vaati's all about using magic and being a sneaky jerk, which I respect. That's how I would take over the world if I was into that sort of thing. This time around, the plot centers around a magic hat that is also kind of a duck, I guess. The hat is Eslo, who was originally a Minish sage and inventor who was transformed into a hat by his former apprentice, Vaati, after Vaati stole a powerful magical artifact that Eslo has created. So this isn't just any old magic hat. The hat talks. Eslo has a personality and he helps you throughout the game. And I know you're thinking, TechDweeb, how can a hat be a compelling sidekick? And I'm here to tell you, I have no idea. It's weird. I actually wouldn't say that he's a compelling sidekick, but he's there and he's somewhat interesting. I mean, Eslo, he has sass, he gives advice, and he helps you solve puzzles by making snarky remarks, disparaging you for your failures and mocking you when you need a hint. I relate to him on a deeply spiritual level because that's sort of how my inner critical monologue sounds. He's a jerk, but a lovable one. And then there's also the whole Minish race. Tiny little creatures that only kids like Link can see. And they add this whimsical layer to the story. It's kind of like a fairy tale version of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but with swords and monsters. Do people today even know Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Is that an old man reference? I don't know. Honestly, I was really into it. Way more than I should have been for a dude my age. But hey, that's why I'm here making Zelda videos, right? Those who know me well know that I am freaking nuts about the pixel art on the Game Boy Advance. And the pixel art in the Minish cap is so good. This game is freaking beautiful. Every location is colorful and detailed and oozes with that classic Zelda charm. Whether you're in Hyrule Town, the Deep Woods, or one of the dungeons, there's always some awesome pixel art scenery and characters to gawk at. Plus, the animations are silky smooth, which is a must for action-adventure games. Nothing worse than a choppy sword swing, am I right? And don't get me started on the music. Actually, do get me started because I'm going to talk about it anyway. The soundtrack in the Minish cap is full of bangers. It's got those classic Zelda tunes, but remixed with new flavor depending on the area that you're in. Makes you feel like you're on a grand adventure, even if you're just sitting in your basement surrounded by granola bar wrappers and HDMI cables, like I am right now as I record this. Here's the big question though. Is the Minish cap still fun today, or is it just one of those games that's best left in the past? Well, let me answer your question with another question. Do you like fun? If you don't, then no, don't play this or any other video game. Go eat some cornflakes and go bird watching. But if you do like fun, then heck yeah, the Minish cap is absolutely worth playing. It's got everything that makes Zelda games great. Awesome dungeons, clever puzzles, cool items, genuinely fun mechanics, and a world that's a blast to explore. Plus, the shrinking mechanic is actually super cool. I mean, come on, it's 2024 and I still get a kick out of seeing Link shrink down to the size of a beetle. There's something magical about revisiting games that nail the balance between nostalgia and genuinely great design. This is one of those games that even 20 years later still holds up. I don't think it's my favorite Zelda game of all time, but it's high on the list, and I think it's my favorite 2D Zelda game. I even liked it better than A Link to the Past, believe it or not. And if that makes you angry, then you go ahead and gather a mob and grab your pitchforks, and as you burst down my door, I'm just gonna shrink down and hide in a flower pot. You won't even find me. Any Zelda game is an important piece of gaming history. Let's be real here. But the Minish cap is a unique page in the history books because this game was developed by Capcom with Nintendo, and that collaboration led to some unique design choices that set it apart from the rest of the series. It's kind of like when your mom helps you with a school project and it turns out way better than if you had done it alone. This game is also important because it marked the last 2D Zelda adventure before the series went full 3D with Twilight Princess and beyond. It's the end of an era, really. If you're a fan of classic top-down Zelda gameplay, you kinda need to play the Minish cap. It's like the GBA's swan song for 2D Zelda games. Plus, it's just a great reminder of how awesome handheld gaming was back in the day, and still is today. Whether you're playing on original hardware, or emulation, or watching a dweeb flapping his hands on YouTube while he talks about it. Resident Evil 2 is a game that I played on the PS1 back in the day. I didn't have a PS1 when this game was released, but I used to stay over at my buddy's house and he got this, and we played this at night in his basement, and oh man. This was so freaking scary at the time. I was super into zombies back then. I love zombie movies. I had never experienced a game that made me scared before this. This was basically my first horror game. And I won't say that it's still scary by today's standards, but it's definitely still suspenseful and eerie, and there are a few good jump scares that still made me pee my pants. Released by Capcom in 1998, Resident Evil 2 is the sequel to Resident Evil 1. It's one of those games that even if you've never played it, you've probably heard of it. It's got lots of zombies, it's got lots of puzzles, and it's got more tension than me trying to ask out a girl on a date. And spoiler alert, I suck at this game, and also I suck at asking girls out on dates. Because I could never get an answer other than, "Sorry sir, I don't date customers. Now, are you gonna order something other than water?" Resident Evil 2 throws you into Raccoon City, a place that's more messed up than my sleep schedule, which is a freaking dumpster fire to be honest. Also, there's actual dumpster fires in Raccoon City. The idea here is that there's multiple kind of stories or scenarios. You get to play as two characters, Leon, a rookie cop on his first day, and Claire, who's looking for her brother Chris from the first game, I think. You play one scenario at a time, but when the story is played out, Leon and Claire's paths intertwine as they navigate the zombie-infested city, uncovering secrets about the Umbrella Corporation and their nefarious experiments. It's like one of those conspiracy theories that my uncle is always talking about, but with more zombies and less ice walls and lizard people. The narrative is split into two scenarios for each character, so you get 4 playthroughs if you want to see the whole thing. It's like getting 4 times the anxiety for the price of 1. Lots of overlap with the puzzles and stuff, but there's some different cutscenes and gameplay stuff and secrets, I think, depending on the scenario that you're playing. I'm gonna be honest, I struggle to get through just one of the scenarios, but that's a good thing. There's a heck ton of replay value here. The actual story of the game isn't super interesting. It's pretty basic, all things considered. There's a few characters introduced and there's a few twists that you might not see coming, but honestly, it's pretty basic. But it is worth going along for the ride. I think the story here is important, not because it's a great game story, but more because it's an important piece in the Resident Evil timeline. It's kind of like required reading if you want the whole story of the Resident Evil universe. Resident Evil 2 is a survival horror game, which means that you'll be managing your inventory, solving puzzles, and trying not to get eaten. And part of the surviving in this game comes from surviving the controls. Tank controls, gotta love them. You press up to move forward and left or right to turn. It's awkward. Sometimes I felt like a baby deer on rollerblades, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be a pro in no time. Inventory management is a big part of the gameplay here. It's an obstacle throughout the entire game. You only have 8 inventory slots and you can only carry a limited number of items. So you have to decide what's more important, extra ammo, health items, or that shiny key that you just found. And spoiler alert, it's always the shiny key. And the puzzles are freaking hard, man. They're hard in a way that only puzzles from the 90s can achieve. Very convoluted, not intuitive, basically lots of trial and error. You'll be combining items, finding passwords, and just wandering through the police station and other areas to find the one thing that you need to find to progress. It's like doing an escape room during a zombie apocalypse. Graphically, Resident Evil 2 was super impressive for its time. The pre-rendered backgrounds are detailed and atmospheric, setting the mood perfectly. Sure, the character models are a bit blocky by today's standards, but back then they were impressive. The fixed camera angles add to the tension, making you feel like you're being watched, which, to be fair, is how I feel most of the time. Thanks, Mom, for always checking on me, making sure I'm staying out of trouble, I guess. The lighting effects and shadows create a creepy atmosphere that's perfect for a horror game. It's like walking through a haunted house, but without the overpriced tickets and sticky floors. Actually, never mind. My floor is pretty sticky, to be fair. The one part that does stick out like a sore thumb with a zombie bite in it is the 3D cutscenes. The rest of the game has a timeless quality, but those cutscenes are definitely a product of their time. Things like this haven't aged nearly as well as other parts of the game. There's not that many of them though, so it's all good. One part that definitely has stood the test of time is the sound. This game's sound design is so dang good. The eerie moans and groans of zombies, the creaking doors, and the footsteps echoing in the empty hallways all contribute to the game's tense atmosphere. It's like ASMR for horror fans. I played this on my Retroid Pocket 2S with headphones on at night, and when I'd enter a new area and hear things groaning and shuffling around off where I couldn't see them, it genuinely freaked me out. The music is good at setting the mood. It ramps up during the intense moments and fades away into the background during exploration, keeping you on the edge. And the jump scares. Let's just say I spilled my root beer more than once, hence the sticky floor. The voice acting is, yeah, it's a product of its time too. It's not good, but it's about on par with games of this era in general.
Who are you? And what are you doing here?
I'm looking for some guy named Ben. He's one of those reporter types.
It's cheesy and over the top, but in a charming way. Like me. Resident Evil 2 is a fantastic game, but it's not without its flaws. The tank controls can be a barrier for new players, especially if you're used to modern games with smoother movement. It took me a while to get used to them, and I'm still not sure I ever fully did. The fixed camera angles, while great for atmosphere, can be frustrating. Sometimes you'll be ambushed by zombies that you can't see because of the camera placement. It's like, surprise, you're dead. And the inventory management, while adding to the tension, usually just feels too restrictive. I mean, how many times do I have to leave behind a crucial item because I picked up one too many herbs? Leon and Claire are such badass protagonists. It seems kind of lame to me that they have to constantly run back and forth from their safe room storage because they couldn't figure out how to carry an extra freaking key or whatever. Also, some of the puzzles can be a bit obtuse and the solutions are rarely straightforward. I spent way too long trying to figure out how to solve some puzzle object because I missed a small detail in a note or something. Keeping track of what door needs what key actually made me want to get out a pad and paper to write this stuff down, old school style. But despite these flaws, Resident Evil 2 remains an incredible, engaging, and memorable experience. It's like a roller coaster. Sure, it has ups and downs, but you'll remember the ride for a long time if you don't get sick, like I tend to do on roller coasters. I'm not big on horror movies. I don't like the genre, except for the subgenre of zombie movies, especially the campy zombie movies of the 70s and 80s. Resident Evil 2 feels like a throwback, not just to the good old days of gaming, but the good old days of classic zombie horror. It's like a history lesson about zombies. Plus, honestly, it's just plain fun. Still, it's a genuinely good game that holds up today. There's something about the combination of tension, strategy, and horror that just keeps you coming back for more. Even if it means screaming like a little kid when some zombie arms grab you from behind a window or something. Not that I did that much. TechDweeb stepping up to the tee here at beautiful Palms course, and it looks like he's selected a pitching wedge. That's a bold move considering this is a par 5. Let's see how this plays out. There's the swing, and into the rough. Wow, what a loser. This guy sucks. I hope he dies alone and forgotten. Not many people know this, but I do on occasion leave my mom's basement, and once a year, I even end up on a golf course. I am terrible. I suck at the game, but I have fun, and that's what really matters. That's what I tell myself, at least. The last time I went golfing, my ball ended up in the water. My ball ends up there at least once every time I golf, but on this day, I had the great idea to try to get the ball out of the water. The rock on the edge of the river didn't look slippery, but looks can be deceiving, and that rock had other ideas for my nonsense. It straight up threw me into the river. My cat-like ninja reflexes saved me. I only ended up knee-deep, but playing the last few holes with soggy pants and socks isn't the best way to feel like a competent golf guy. But golf is the kind of game where it's all about your mindset. Yeah, you might suck and you might be covered in sticks from digging through bushes, and you might be soggy from the knee down, and you might be out of balls because all the times you couldn't find your ball in the bushes or the river. But if you don't take it too seriously, and if you can laugh it off and just enjoy whacking a ball around, you'll have a good time. And also, I discovered you can cheat. I just write down whatever number I want on the paper. Nobody even tries to stop you. I have a similar approach to golf video games as well. Not the cheating part, although if you consider save states cheating, then I guess, yeah, also the cheating part. I mean, golf video games are usually simple to understand but difficult to be good at. And just like real golf, if you approach them with the right mindset, they are tons of fun, even if you suck at them. And that brings us to Mario Golf Advance Tour. It's a golf game, but more than that, it's a golf RPG with an actual story and recurring characters. It's a lighthearted, whimsical world full of golf-related adventure and Nintendo character cameos, and it's hard. But with the right attitude, the lighthearted whimsy of Mario Golf Advance Tour can definitely brighten your day, or leave you feeling soggy, like what happens to me usually. In addition to being a golf RPG, this is Mario Golf. It's got Mario right in the name, which means that it's got lots of that special Nintendo secret sauce squirted all over it. Although I'll tell you right now, there's not a ton of actual Mario in this Mario Golf game. He's in there, but the whole Mario thing is more of a window dressing, figuratively and literally. There's an actual Mario window, which is one of my personal goals as well, to be immortalized in window form. This game came out back in 2004. It was made by Camelot Software, who are the same wizards behind the super popular Golden Sun series. And the style that they developed for that game can be felt in the tone of this game and the art style. It's got this lighthearted, childlike vibe to it, and it's really dang charming. Not just the design of the game, but also the story. What? What's that? A story in a golf game? Yeah, you heard me, bucko. In Mario Golf Advance Tour, you don't just jump into tournaments by clicking a few buttons. You actually walk around and do stuff. You start off as a newbie golfer, either Neil or Ella, who joins the Marion Golf Club to become a champion. Your goal is to rise through the ranks, beat the club champions, and ultimately take on Mario and the other colorful characters in the Mario franchise. There's not a ton to the story, but compared to most golf games where you maybe get to have a quick chat with the guy at the pro shop between rounds, Mario Golf has a cute little story that carries you through the game. You get to walk around the golf academy, chat with the other golfers, and participate in various challenges to improve your skills. It's like RPG light, but golf. And also you gain experience and choose which stats to level up, so it does feel like a proper RPG. The main character that you interact with is Ella if you're a boy, or Neil if you're a girl. This is your golf partner. There are singles tournaments where you play by yourself, but there's doubles tournaments where you play as a pair, and when you level up your partner too. Other than that, you'll meet a bunch of charming, if one-dimensional characters, and most of them are just there to offer you challenges and give you access to extra stuff. Still, it adds a layer of depth that you wouldn't expect in a sports game. You walk around and talk to people and they congratulate you and tell you that you're doing good. You might find yourself caring more about what these cute pixelated sprites think about you more than you do about actually winning trophies. At least I did, but that's because I crave acceptance and approval. Speaking of which, if you haven't clicked the subscribe button, I'd really like that. If you've ever played a golf game before, you'll feel right at home here. And if you haven't, there's an extensive tutorial area that'll teach you the basics. You pick your club, which will determine the trajectory of your ball. You've got your standard 3-click swing system. Click to start your swing, click to set the power, and click again to determine accuracy. However, there is some good extra complexity here. You can determine where the impact on the ball is, and you can control the fade and the draw, which can help you fine-tune your shot. And while you swing, you can do some fancy key combos on the button tap to give the ball some backspin or topspin. When I mastered this, I was able to get my ball to land where I wanted it to a lot more often. But there's strategy too. You need to think about the wind and the terrain and the best way to approach the green. Sometimes it almost feels like a puzzle game as you plan your approach, which is a lot easier to do in a golf video game. In real life, I just whack it and hope for the best. And usually get the worst. Advanced Tour features a variety of courses, each with its own unique challenges. You got your lush greens and sandy bunkers and pesky water hazards. The difficulty starts out pretty easy, and for the first while you'll be lulled into a false sense of not sucking. But that wears off when you get to the end of the main tournaments, and then later when the game throws in some wacky Mario elements like question mark blocks and bombs, you'll miss the good old days when you could always top the charts. The game also lets you customize your character's stats as you level up. You want to hit the ball farther? Dump points into power. You want to make sure you don't slice the ball all the way to the Flower Kingdom? Invest in control. It adds a layer of strategy and gives you something to work towards. You dweebs know how much I love the pixel art on the GBA. And here, I don't know. I'm not nuts about the style in this game, to be honest. There's a bit too much imprecision in the character art and the world art. It's fine, I'm not saying it's ugly, but it's not a timeless classic the way lots of the tighter pixel art games on the GBA were, in my opinion, which is correct. One thing that the designers did well is how they captured the whimsical feel of the Mario universe. The top-down view of the courses gives you a good sense of depth and layout, and then when the camera goes down to the ground for the 3D effect as you see your golfer swing, it's actually believable and it's technically impressive. Not for putting though. Putting feels imprecise because it's all top-down from a far distance away. I wish they did the golfer view for the putting too. What's particularly impressive is how the game manages to convey different environments and weather conditions. You'll find yourself playing in sunny, rainy, and even snowy conditions, each affecting how your ball behaves. It adds to the immersion and it keeps the gameplay and visuals kind of mixing it up all the time. Mario games usually have music that I love, but Mario Golf Advance Tour does not. Oh my god, I hate the music in this game so much. I'm sorry, I know some people probably like it, but these tunes just drove me nuts. They're short, so they're repetitive, and they are way too intense for a golf game. Just listen to this. How am I supposed to chill out with that pumping through my headphones? I turned the music off. The game instantly became a lot more chill as soon as I did that. The sound effects are good though, from the satisfying thwack of the club hitting the ball to the cheerful chirping of the birds in the background. It almost makes me want to go outside and touch some actual grass. Yeah, let's go do that. Aww. Mario Golf Advance Tour has its share of quirks. For one, the AI can be a bit inconsistent. Sometimes they play like they've never held a club before, and other times they'll sink a 50-foot putt without breaking a sweat. They're all over the place. It's like golfing against my cat Hermione. One moment she's knocking over my root beer as she squeezes in for snuggles, and the next she's acting like she doesn't even know me. Why are you so flippant? The game's difficulty can also be a bit uneven. You know, sometimes it's a breeze and sometimes you're just pulling out your hair in frustration. And let's not forget the occasional moments of bad luck when your perfectly aimed shot gets blown off course or blowed up by a bomb. Seriously, why are there bombs on the course? Who thought it would be okay to put bombs there? The story mode can feel a bit slow at times, with long stretches without any actual story stuff as you're grinding through challenges to improve your stats. Sometimes I'd walk around talking to people just because I was bored, hoping they'd say something new. But no, same old boring bullcrap, just like most people in real life. So overall, it's a good game and a fantastic example of how to make a sports game that's both fun and accessible. It's got that classic Nintendo charm, blending solid gameplay with whimsical elements that keep things interesting. And playing this was a nice reminder of why Nintendo is the king of handheld gaming. Throughout the entire company's history, they give us affordable hardware and games that were designed well with lots of charm, and franchises with lovable, timeless characters. But most importantly, Mario Golf Advance Tour, it is fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's perfect for quick pick up and play sessions. Whether you're a die-hard Mario fan or just someone who enjoys a good round of digital golf, this game is a hole-in-one. But I mean, if you don't like golf or golf games, don't play this. It's a golf game with lots of golf. Lots of other games out there with zero golf in them, like this one. Wait, what even is this one? What am I looking at? I've been a big fan of the Pirate series for a long time. I played the original version on DOS on my uncle's computer when I was a kid. I was too young to understand anything that was happening on the screen, but I did enjoy seeing the pretty pictures and pretending that I knew how to play. Later in life, I got the remake version on the original Xbox, and I loved that game. That's one of my favorite original Xbox games, actually. However, the Xbox version that came out in 2004 was a remake of Pirates Gold for the Sega Genesis, which came out in 1993, which is a remake of the original Pirates, which came out in 1987. So it's kind of a chain of remake after remake of a very old game. And because I love the Xbox version so much, I always wanted to go back to the original and try it out. And I did, but the 1987 DOS version has not aged well. However, lots of retro gamers agree that the Sega Genesis version is the definitive retro Pirates experience, so that's it. My mind was made up and I gathered the dusty dweebs of the Dusty Game Society. We forged a dark pact while drinking grog by candlelight, and we set sail with the intention of discovering what a true retro pirate experience would be. Now, you might be looking at the screen and wondering what the heck this game even is. And the short version is that it's half strategy game, half action adventure, and half pirate life simulator. Basically, if you ever wanted to be a pirate from the 16-bit pixel game era but lack the sea legs or a time machine, this is it. This is the one to play. You play as a captain during the golden age of piracy. You start out by picking your scenario, kind of what time frame you're playing and what's going on. You can give yourself a name and choose a nation to align with, who you'll probably betray, let's be real, and you set out to make your fortune. I think the idea of a hero pirate is a noble thing that's portrayed in media, but really the life of a pirate was just about stealing as much as possible to create a life for yourself and then bailing on the pirate life before you die. And that's what you're doing here. You'll plunder ships, raid towns, duel rival captains, and even rescue lost family members and find a wife, and then you choose when you're gonna settle down, and that's basically the end of the game. It's like living your best pirate life, but without the smell of unwashed pirates all over the place all the time. Unless your roommates or wife smell like unwashed pirates, then you'll feel right at home here. There is a story here, but it's very bare bones. It's more like a framework to give you a goal, because the game is super open-ended. You'll start by creating your pirate captain and choosing a background, like a dashing rogue or a savvy privateer, and then the game starts right in the action. You're dueling the previous captain of your ship, and spoiler alert, you win, and now you're the captain, and you're tossed into the Caribbean with a ship and a crew and a dream of fame and fortune. So there's a loose narrative about reuniting your family, which adds a bit of a personal touch to the chaos, but really, the story is whatever you make of it. Will you become a feared pirate who's wanted by every navy, or just a nice by-the-books trader who exploits alliances to get rich? The choice is yours, me party matey, me boy. The gameplay in Pirates Gold is kinda hit or miss. Some parts shine like buried treasure, and some parts are as dull as swabbing the poop deck. You're free to roam the seas, taking on different activities depending on your mood. As you sail, you come across ships and you can see them through your looking glass to figure out what nation they are aligned with. And then you can choose. You can, attack a Spanish galleon loaded with gold, or if they're an ally, you can hail them for information, or just attack them too. Eventually, you'll probably need to stock up on supplies so you can dock at a friendly port and trade goods at the store there. Or if it's an unfriendly port, you'll get attacked. Or you can attack them. If you want to shake things up, you can go and raid a town or go off on a hunt for buried treasure. The game's open-ended structure lets you decide how to carve your name into pirate history. It sounds fun, and it is, but there is some rough edges, and very often your objectives are unclear. Like lots of retro games, you need to make sure to pay attention and maybe even take notes so you don't forget the things you're told and where you need to go and what you need to do. But there's lots of fun to be had once you learn what you need to do and follow the various threads through to their conclusions. And of course, there's also ship battles, which are pretty simple, but there's lots of strategy. It kind of feels like a game of cat and mouse, and you need to learn how to position yourself and use the wind to be able to use your cannons to shoot the enemy or board them. And then when you do board them, you and the enemy ship captain face off in a duel, where you'll sword fight in a kind of mini game that's equal parts timing and strategy, at least in principle. The duels kind of suck. They're important, but the actual mechanics are just janky and old feeling. Just look at what you're seeing and picture if a fighting game was released and this is how it looked and played. Obviously, no, this isn't good gameplay. It's awful. It's not a huge part of the game, and you can get away with button mashing 99% of the time. I think I lost maybe 2 or 3 duels in the entire month that I was playing. You will also manage your crew, who are, let's say, high maintenance. You gotta keep them fed and paid, but mostly entertained. They'll get all mutinous whenever you haven't attacked anything for a while. It's actually annoying how hard it is to keep them happy. It's like being a pirate babysitter. Except unlike real babysitters, you can just split your loot and cut your losses and leave the crew at your nearest town and sail away. I guess real babysitters can do that, but they tend to end up in jail for it. Just like real pirates, I guess. Maybe this is realistic. For a Sega Genesis game, Pirates Gold looks pretty solid. I really enjoyed the overall vibe of the graphics. I think it looks really good. The colorful 16-bit sprites do a good job of bringing the Caribbean to life. There's a few different ship designs, and they're unique enough looking, and the character sprites during duels are hilariously expressive, even if they all have the same 3 actual faces. There's not much here by way of graphics. You'll see the same stuff over and over, but what's here is good, so I'm not too fussed. Yo ho ho, the music in this game it's good. There's not music all the time. Very often you can just hear the sea and the waves, but there is some good jaunty tunes that come up and it's all very piratey. The sound effects are serviceable. Cannons boom and swords clash and waves crash. Basic stuff, but it gets the job done. Although if you're like me, you'll turn the sound down after a while because the same cannon sound effect on repeat can get a little grating. I actually ended up often playing this while also listening to some pirate music compilations on Spotify. Overall, I really liked the game. I don't know if I love it, but I like it. Like the open-endedness and the vibrant, interconnected world, and even the actual sailing and combat was fun. The trading, I like that. I wish I could do more of that without my crew getting all annoyed that I'm not fighting more, but it's not all smooth sailing. The controls can be a bit clunky, especially during naval battles. Sometimes you'll feel like you're wrestling with the wind just to get your ship to go where you want. I mean, I guess that's realistic, but in this game, it's hard to know how much of your inability to maneuver is because of the game physics and wind versus just being janky and glitchy. The pacing can also be hit or miss. Some parts of the game are actually fun and exciting, like when you're raiding a port and it's touch and go, or completing tasks like finding lost family members or uncovering buried treasure. When you're actually able to follow through with the clues and find what you're looking for, it feels really rewarding. Other parts like trading goods or negotiating alliances or keeping track of where you need to go to do something, it can feel like pirate paperwork, not exactly the stuff of legends. And really that's just because the game lacks some of the modern conveniences that we get in games today. Things like quest logs and tracking your tasks. It's just like many retro games, this game doesn't hold your hand at all. There's a halfway decent game manual, which I definitely suggest you read, but there's no tutorial. No, here's how to be a pirate in 5 easy steps guide. You're thrown into the deep end and expected to figure it out. I mostly enjoyed learning how stuff worked, but I can't promise you will. I think Pirates Gold is a special game in the story of gaming history because it's an early example of an open world game. Games from this era didn't typically have a massive open world giving players the freedom to explore and plunder and chart their own course. And of course, there is a long history of pirate games, and this is one of the most famous classic pirate game series like ever. So I think it's realistic to say that this game paved the way for modern pirate games like Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Sea of Thieves. Without Pirates Gold, who knows if we'd even have Skull and Bones? And where would we be without that game? It's also a great example of Sid Meier's genius as a game designer. Keeping in mind the era that this game came out, the mix of strategy, action, and exploration was probably groundbreaking at the time. And despite the gripes, most aspects of it still hold up well today. Lots of it is a bit dated, but as a whole, it's like a fine rum, aged to perfection. I hate the taste of rum. I'm more of a root beer guy myself, but pirates didn't drink root beer, and that's not my problem, that's their problem. I feel bad for them, to be honest. And also, one of the reasons that we here at the Dusty Game Society do what we do, playing Pirates Gold today, is a reminder of how far games have come. Plus, you get to shout "Arr" a lot. At least I did, until my mom threatened to ground me for waking her up at 3 a.m. Pirates wouldn't care about waking up their mom though. So I still said "Arr" just loud enough that I didn't get in trouble, like a real pirate would do. And wow, that was a lot of games. 12 full-on Dusty adventures. Oh, what a year it's been. I had so much fun playing through these with the Dusty Game Society. Seriously, this is one of my absolute favorite things that I do on this channel. There's just something just magical about playing these old games together. Struggling through the tough bits and discovering the hidden joys and then sharing our thoughts like some sort of retro game book club, except instead of books, it's like old retro cutscenes and exploding robots. Way better than any stupid book. So the Dusty Game Society is a monthly retro game club that I run as a perk for the kind and generous and frankly suspiciously cool patrons of TechDweeb. If you're interested in supporting the important work that I do and joining the ranks of the Dusty Game Society, there is a link in the thingy below. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. I hope you check out some of these games if you haven't already, and don't forget the full videos for each one are in the playlist that is linked below. Lots of silly skits and extra opinions to enjoy in there. I'll make sure the 2025 compilation video doesn't show up halfway through 2026 like this one did here. I just kind of had this idea recently and I ran with it. So stay tuned for that. And from all of us here at the Dusty Game Society, thank you for following along last year. I hope you enjoyed this compilation. Stay tuned for what's coming next. And also, stay dusty, my friends.